listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the 40 Thrive Podcast. If this is your first time here and you're a woman over 40 looking for honest conversation, experts, and resources to help you thrive over 40, you are in the right place. Today on the show, I'm talking with Samantha Kemp Jackson. She is living proof of shaking things up over 40, from switching careers, not once but twice, to starting over in parenting. Sam is all about reinvention and following your dreams. A parenting writer, media commentator, and host of the podcast Parenting Then and Now, Sam is the mother of 4 children ranging in age from adult to elementary school. But before we get into my conversation with Sam, today's episode is brought to you by our own incredible 40 Thrive giveaway. How many of you are fans of the show Friends? I remember when I was pregnant with my first son in 2004, I was really hoping he wouldn't come early because then I would miss the Friends series finale live. Remember when we used to actually make appointment to watch TV live? I don't think I ever missed an episode, and I still get sucked in by the repeats. So now you can experience your favorite Friends at Friends the Musical Parody. It's running July 16th through August 4th, 2019 at the Kirk Douglas Theatre in Culver City. Friends the Musical Parody is the comedic musical that lovingly pokes fun at TV's Friends, celebrating the adventures of your favorite group of 20-something friends as they navigate the pitfalls of work, life, and love in 1990s Manhattan. I am giving away 2 pairs of tickets to see Friends the Musical Parody. And if you subscribe to this podcast already, you've already got yourself an entry. So check out our social media posts at 40 Thrive on Instagram and Facebook, or in our private 40 Thrive Facebook group for all the details. I cannot wait to see this show next month, and I'm excited to give away 2 pairs of tickets. Okay, now to the reason you're here. Let's talk career, parenting, and those very real challenges we face over 40 with Samantha Kemp Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Jackie. I'm so glad to be here.
I can't believe how long it has taken me to get you on the show, because you are one of the first people I thought of when I started to think about the 40 Thrive podcast and who I wanted to have on.
Goodness, you are so kind. And now, okay, you've built me up. Now I'm thinking I better deliver something here.
Bring it. So I want to first talk about everything that you are doing and how it shifted after you turned 40. Your background is in publicity and you've done so many things, but how did life shift for you a little bit career-wise after turning 40?
That's a really interesting question. Well, I would say that I kind of had this revelation, and I realized that at the stage that I was in my life in terms of my work, what I was doing in my career, my kids, my family, it wasn't making me happy. I was kind of doing the proverbial rat race running. I actually worked in a PR agency, a communications agency, my last kind of 9-to-5 corporate job. And I wasn't loving it. I like communications, I like writing, I like media, I like all that stuff, but I wasn't loving the 9-to-5. I had my teenage daughter when I was almost 38. And then I had my twins when I was 43. So that was just like crazy times, and people think I'm nuts. And so that really made me self-reflect and look at, okay, what am I doing with my life? Is this working? Is it not working? And more practically or more logistically, I had to go back to work, and it was just crazy. It was crazy. They weren't sleeping. It was insane. I thought, why am I doing this? PR agencies are a younger person's game. So then I just started kind of looking around and thinking, okay, what is going to make me happy? And that's when I started my blog, Multiple Mayhem Mama. But it wasn't to garner any kind of publicity. It was really more of a cathartic outlet, so I could just write about where I was at in my life and parenting and kids and the inanity of it all, et cetera, et cetera. And then things just kind of, I don't know, I guess took off from there. And then I kind of shifted into my new life. So I think all's well that ends well, as they say. And they say that if you follow your heart and your dreams, then things will come true. And I think it's probably true for most of us.
Okay. I love your story, but at the same time, so I started blogging and then I made a living and everything's great. So let's break that down a little bit. You got into the whole mommy blogging space when it was obviously in its heyday, which was a great time. Timing is so much when it comes to building your business. So when you got into that space, did you think like, I'd like to make some money at it? Were you just trying to vent? What were you looking at it as?
Well, that's an interesting question because I actually wasn't really thinking about it from a making money perspective. And I would say that I think I was kind of at the tail end of the quote unquote mommy blogging world. So I started my blog in 2011. But I know that it was big a few years prior to that. And I didn't even realize that it was a thing. I just thought, oh, I'm just going to do this. Then I realized there was a whole community out there who was kind of doing the same thing. I never really wrote very personally about my kids per se. It was more kind of 30,000 foot view, talking about parenting in general and kids in general. And to this day, I kind of call myself a parenting writer because I do write about parenting, but not specifically about my kids. Anyway, it kind of just by, luck, osmosis, I don't know, just kind of started to take off because when I decided a few months after starting my blog that I could no longer work in the PR agency, I emailed all of my contacts, my media contacts that I knew that I had been pitching stories to for my clients. And I said, just an FYI, I'm no longer going to be working in this agency. I'm going to be starting my own communications consultancy, which I did start. And by the way, as an aside, I also started this blog. Here you go. Here's a link. Thanks very much. Goodbye. And then one of the producers that I had known quite well, but not from doing any media for her, but working with her on stories for my clients, said, oh, Sam, I read this article that you wrote on your blog. I really like it, dining out with kids or something. Can you come on the show and talk about it? And she was the producer for a morning show here in Toronto. And I said, sure, no problem. So I went on, and then I ended up being on there as their regular every month. And then another station took me on being a regular morning show parenting person then. And then things just kind of organically kind of came about in terms of, doing media stuff and parenting stuff and the like.
Right. I know that there are a lot of women who are listening who would love to get out of their 9-to-5, would love to shift into having a little bit more control over their schedule. In hindsight, I mean, it's been a few years now since you did it. In hindsight, what would be that biggest piece of advice you would give somebody who's trying to leave that corporate thing?
I hate to sound Pollyanna, Jackie, but I would say follow your dreams, because if you follow your dreams, and now I'm going to sound like a total granola flake, which I really am. And I think the universe has plans for us. I do. I think that if you kind of put out into the world what it is that you really want and desire, then it will, the path that is laid out for you will come to fruition as it's supposed to be. So if you really feel that you're in this space that is not you, because I was in that space, and I kind of pivoted and went elsewhere. If other people feel that they have this inkling or this calling to do something else, then absolutely follow it. Yes, in terms of practicalities, you should try to have a contingency plan. I was foolish and didn't, and I tend to be very impulsive, and I don't know if that's good or bad, because my husband was saying to me, Sam, I kept saying, I'm quitting. And he's like, okay, just calm down. Just, so
slow your roll.
Slow down, lady. So yeah, try to have a contingency plan. Don't be as foolhardy as perhaps I was, but I definitely think that, especially after 40, you reach this point in your life where you say, okay, is my life half over? It could be, theoretically. Do I have 40 more years? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And it forces you to kind of look at, okay, so thus far, even if I have another 40 years, have I spent the first 40 doing what I want to do? And if the answer is no, then, I think it's incumbent upon you as a person to try to fulfill your dreams in some capacity. It doesn't have to be a huge thing where, you go out and completely change your job and completely go to a different company, but maybe it's something small. Maybe you've always wanted to paint, or maybe you've always wanted to take singing lessons, or maybe you always wanted to get up in front of an audience and do stand-up comedy. But I really think even if it's small, I mean, it has to be scalable and it has to be realistic. If there's one thing that you really want to do and have always wanted to do and have never done it, I would absolutely recommend, once you hit 40, just say, you know what, I'm throwing caution to the wind and I'm going to do it, because what's the worst that can happen? That's my rationale. Okay, what's the worst that can happen? You try something, doesn't
Yeah.
work. You say, okay, well, I learned from that. I'm moving on.
Yeah, it's just life is a series of choices.
Exactly.
If that choice didn't work, make another
Make
one.
another one.
And you make a great point, because it isn't all about starting a new job. Maybe it's just you want to live a life that's more aligned with who you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, like I've seen so many women who are adventurous spirits, and then they kind of get calmed down with real life. And it's like, bring back that adventurous spirit. Try that thing you always wanted to try. Go skydiving if you feel like it. Like, do whatever it is. So it's not always career related. But I want to go back a little bit, because you talk about that, granola side, as you called it, where you believe that the universe will provide, but you're also quite a hustler. It's not like you sit in meditation and sing kumbaya and know that it will all appear. Like, I see how hard you work in making these things happen for yourself. So how do you kind of work both sides of that, where you know that if you put it out there that you're going to get back what you need, but also do the work to get there?
That's very kind of you to say, first of all. And second of all, I would say, I don't know that my quote unquote hustling is by design. I think it's really more, I just inherently feel like, oh, I think I'm going to do this. Oh, I think I'm going to bother this person. I've always kind of been more on that side. So I think maybe that's why I went into communications. PR is actually my second career. So I started that career after I'd worked for almost 10 years in government. And I went back to school. So I graduated from university in sociology and English. My first job out of school was working with our provincial social services, social assistance department. So I, for all intents and purposes, was facilitating people who were on social assistance, welfare, doing home visits. I had a caseload. I had hundreds of people that I had to connect with and consult with and go to their homes and do home visits. And I did that for almost 10 years. And then people thought I was crazy. And I said, you know what? I'm leaving this. So I've done this twice. Okay.
Wow.
So I said,
Yeah.
I'm leaving this and I'm going to do something else. And in the interim, I had gone to school at night to get my PR diploma. While I was doing that, I left my government job, took a package, gave my job to someone else, worked in a software company for about 4 years, doing something completely unrelated. I was doing software sales renewal. And then very long story, I became friends with somebody who was the communications director at the software company. And I had told her I was taking my PR diploma. And she said, if you really want to get into it, you have to kind of jump in head first. So I applied for a few jobs and I got hired at an agency. And that's that's how the second thing went. And I guess the PR and the parenting and the media stuff is that's kind of an offshoot of that, but it's almost the third, I guess. I never really thought of that before, but so I do think that there were two things happening, and there was a confluence of occurrences that kind of made me end up in the place that I was. So, the first instance, I was starting to get that restlessness, and I think that that's maybe something I haven't mentioned before. I think if you feel this kind of restlessness about what you're doing, you feel that, yeah, I'm okay. I'm kind of plugging along. I'm, doing the rat race. I'm on the treadmill every day, but it's not really bringing me joy. If you're feeling that kind of inkling that maybe something else is out there, then maybe that's the time that you need to kind of reassess and decide that, okay, now's the time where I think I need to really investigate what it is that is causing that little fluctuation inside of me that itch I need to scratch.
Right. So there are a lot of women out there. I have spoken to probably hundreds of them who get that itch, who feel that thing. And then, I'm not all that skilled in the subconscious mind, but then are told somewhere in the back of their head, you can't do that. You need to stay where you are, be safe, don't take risks. What do you think it is in you that allowed you to just go for it anyway, even though you probably had a couple of those voices in the back of your head?
Oh yeah, I absolutely had those voices. And at the end of the day, I'm like everybody, we're all kind of like this, especially women, and that's a whole other story. But I do have that insecurity. I don't have that confidence. And it's funny because people say, oh, you come across as really confident and very self-assured. And I think, I have imposter syndrome big time, because we all have, because deep down, I think, do I know what I'm doing? Do I know what I'm talking about? I think the exercise is learning to overcome that doubtful voice that we all have inside that says, you can't do this. Sam, you're crazy. What do you think this is? They're all going to laugh at you, right? I mean, I definitely have those feelings all the time, but I think the difference is that when you are over 40, you say, well, okay, so they're going to laugh. What's the worst that's going to happen? If someone, that's really the question that I kind of come back to myself with when I start feeling really insecure. I think, okay, if I do this or if I say this, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that's going to happen is someone will ignore me, somebody will laugh at me, somebody will not take to heart what I'm saying or doing. So what? Right? That's the difference. When I was 25, I would think, wow, what if these people don't like me? Now I think I really don't care. And that's the beauty of being over 40 and over 50, is that you think, I really don't care what people think. That's my life lesson, is that I really don't care at the end of the day. And I used to care so much.
Absolutely. Have you seen that Brene Brown Netflix special?
No, I haven't. It's queued up in my list and people keep telling me, but I think I need to watch it because it keeps being referenced.
Yes, the universe is tapping on your shoulder, like, you need to watch this. But one of the things she says, and I'm going to paraphrase it because like there's no way I could quote it, but she talks about those people who do have an opinion and who speak up about the choices that you're making in your life. And those are usually the people who are not in the arena.
Yeah.
Like nobody who's doing what they truly want and love to do and feel good about it, give a tiny rat's ass about what you're doing in your life.
It's true. It's true. And you know what? And to add to that, Jackie, what I would say is that if people really care about you, if they really are your friends, your family, or whomever, they're going to support you no matter what. You know, if my very dear friend of mine came to me and said, Sam, I want to become a lounge singer, I would, at the end of the day, I'd say, you know what? I support you 100%. I'll come out and see you. I'll cheer in the aisles. I might say to them, you know, just make sure, like, you know, do you have a contingency plan? Or, you know, how are you going to feel if you get heckled? You know, I try to talk them through it. But the bottom line is, you know, we're supposed to be lifting each other up and supporting each other. And oftentimes when people tell you things, they just want that assuredness that they're making the right decision. They don't want to hear you say, well, that's a stupid idea. Why are you doing that? They don't want to hear that. They want to hear something positive. And I don't know why people feel especially women, I think we're, I don't know, raised or pitted against each other in society. I think that's really bad. I think that's a whole other issue. But I think that we're pitted against each other. Instead of supporting each other, oftentimes we are in competition with each other, which I don't think is healthy at all.
Do you think that's a natural place that we come from? Or do you think that we've been programmed to do that?
I think we've been programmed to do that. I like to believe that people are inherently kind, nice people. That's my granola coming back. I like to believe if we're all nice and kind to each other, then the world will be a nicer, kinder place. I mean, look at all the things that are going on in this world right now. I do think that if people really stopped for a minute and just thought about what they were saying or what they were doing, or being a little bit kinder, or just giving someone a smile in the morning, or giving a positive, you know, phrase of assurance to somebody, that could go so far. And I just feel we don't do it that much anymore. And I think women are pitted against each other. And I think it's really sad.
I think sometimes we take our fear and our need for safety and we put it on other people. So go back to the lounge singer for a second. You know, you have a friend who wants to be a lounge singer. We don't want them to face rejection. We don't want them to face any sort of financial difficulties. And so we're like, well, and then we bring up all these other things. They don't need that. They've already considered failing on stage or having financial difficulties. And so I like when you said you do bring up things like, hey, have you considered these things? Because you want them to be helpful and not because you're trying to talk them out of going for their dreams.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's also how you say things and how you position. Maybe it's my PR mind now, right? Like, you know, so if you say to somebody, oh, you want to be a lounge singer, that's great. You know, I'm sure that you've, you know, thought about all the different variables with that decision. And I'm sure that you have, you know, you're a smart person. I'm sure you've got a contingency plan, and I can't wait to come out to see you. As opposed to, wow, I don't know about that. You know, it sounds like you might bomb. And then what if people share it on social media? Like, why are you presenting all these negatives, right? Like, I just think, you know, it's really how you look at things. Try to be positive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is over 40 is a prime time to be lifting each other up, because we all have experience. We may not have the same experience, but we've all been through a lot of stuff.
Oh, totally.
And so we can do what we can to help each other out.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important point. It's a very salient point that you said, because I think a lot of the things that people say are projections of their own fears, right? You know, when people say things, oftentimes it's not about who they're saying it to. It's what they are projecting in terms of their fears, their, you know, their sadness, whatever, they're projecting it. So when people say, well, I don't know if you're going to be successful, maybe, why would you care? Like, why wouldn't you say something positive? Why wouldn't you say, this is fantastic, you're going to be a lounge singer, I can't wait to come and see you? Why would you not say that? It doesn't hurt to be positive and kind and nice. So you kind of have to ask the question, well, if your response is something negative, what does that say about you?
And what's going on with you,
Yeah.
especially, as our kids get older. So in the 40 Thrive community, I recently asked the members if they were parents, the ages of their kids, so that way I can better serve the needs of the group. And many of the women have kids in multiple age groups, from under 10 to flown and grown. And you fall into that
Yes.
category. So you have 4 kids.
Yes.
What are the ages?
Youngest two are 10, identical twins. Next one is 15, grown up, married, flown, 30. How old is she? 34.
So you've done it all. So you started as a young mom.
Yes, I was very young.
And then, like you said, you had your twins in your 40s. How do you approach parenting now? You're in your 50s?
I'm 53.
Okay. So how do you approach parenting at 53 versus when you were younger?
I would say, generally speaking, Jackie, I'd say that I don't let things get to me too much, because you can't. I think, again, that's that wisdom of the ages, not necessarily of being a parent, but definitely of age, that you realize, you know what, this isn't going to matter tomorrow. It's not going to matter next week. It's not going to matter next year. 5 years from now, I'm not even going to remember this incident. So why am I getting myself all worked up, for no good reason? And there are trade-offs to having kids when you're young versus having them when you're old. So I know what it's like to be a very young mom. And I mean, there's only a 19-year difference between me and my oldest child, because I was 19. Because I was so young, there's not that much of a difference. We were more like friends. We were hanging out, we were doing this, we were doing that, et cetera, et cetera. So you're younger, you have more energy, you have more ability to kind of do physical things with your kids, you have more stamina. You're older, you might not have that physical stamina, but you do have more wisdom. Hopefully you'll have more money because you will have worked in a career for a number of years. So I think that definitely being older, not saying that it's better, but there's positive aspects to it. And I think that, again, women don't hear that enough, because even the whole thing about my age, like for many years, I wouldn't even say what my age was, because people would always ask me. Now I got to this point, I don't really care. I don't care, but I have peers, colleagues, friends, and they would never go on a show and say how old they were. They would never.
Oh, yeah. So it's funny because some people will, like on a birthday or something, happy 29th or whatever. I'm like, no, I'll tell you exactly how old I am, because I think I come from a different perspective. My mom was 39 when she died. And so the fact that I'm in my 40s, like, this feels like bonus time. This feels like I better do something with this because it's a gift. And so I have absolutely no problem saying how old I am. And I know I'm just getting better with age.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm sure I'd love to hear your perspective, because you work in production and you've worked in Hollywood and you've worked with, so I think, isn't it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but isn't it in that particular industry where it's very acutely felt that you have to be younger or lie about your age or not tell your age or be vague or whatever?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, as, sometimes I freelance on shows and things like that. And I have a lot of friends in the industry, and many of them, I've had 3 conversations in the last week alone with women who work in TV who are like, I just need to find something else. Like, one of them talked about getting a job at TJ Maxx or something. Like, it's when you're in it and you're doing the work and it's crazy hours and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I killing myself 17, 18 hours a day? But then on the flip side, in between jobs, especially if you're freelance, you're like selling yourself. It's always the hustle, and it's exhausting sometimes, And so I've been talking to these women about what else is there. But at the same time, I've realized that I'm sort of playing the same tape over, that there's an aging out process. And whether it's true or not, I believe that the women who are not aging out are the ones who believe that there is no aging out process. They're innovating. That's why I still get freelance work, because I have taken what I've done in TV, and then I moved it into the digital space, and then I moved it into podcasting, and I try to stay ahead of the game. So then when I talk to these people who work in a traditional TV field, they're like, oh, I need to learn these things from you. Great. And I'm here to teach them. But I think there's a lot of fear, especially when we hit like closer to 50 and over in this industry and in many industries, that we are no longer viable. And it breaks my heart, and I don't know how to fix it.
Isn't that sad though? Isn't that sad that we are taught that we don't have value once we've reached a certain age? And I think, kind of harkening back to what I said a few minutes ago, that I think this is a really good time and a really good opportunity for us as women, especially women over the age of 40 and 50 and 60 and however old, to really remind each other that we have so much value. We have more value in some ways than somebody 25. And I'm not slagging millennials or anything like that, but we have lived. Some of us have, we've lost people, we've known love and loss, people have passed on, we've had children, we've gone through things in life that have made us the people that we are today. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through all the things I've gone through. You wouldn't be the woman you are today without all of the experiences. All of our cumulative experiences are what leads us to who we are right now in this point in time. And how sad that we are not supporting and celebrating this, especially women. Why is it that when a man is 55, oh, he's great, he's, at the pinnacle of his career and blah, blah, blah. Well, why isn't a woman when, and she's probably, had children too. That's quite a feat. And she's probably taken on most of the caregiving or more of the caregiving.
The amount of life we have lived and the number of things we've accomplished is astounding when you sit down and you talk to a woman over 50, especially, and beyond. I remember watching my dad in the hospital. He died a few years ago. He was 79. But I would say when he was over 70, he'd be in the hospital, and the way they would come and go and like barely even acknowledge his presence, or, not really talk to him about his own medical care. And it was just like, you get to a certain age and you're disregarded. And I wanted to scream, like, this man raised 13 children. He worked tirelessly. Like, he is so smart and amazing. And you are just like walking past him. And that's what I feel happening to women in the workplace who are of a certain age. But I think it's up to us to really lift each other up and help each other identify maybe what our superpowers are, and what that special sauce is, because I think we start to forget all of the things that we're really good at. And so to be able to sit down with a friend and say, oh my gosh, remember when you did A, B, and C? Have you considered putting yourself out there, marketing this or whatever it is, but really lifting each other up, like you've said, in a way that we can start to see our gifts all over again. Because how many times, and I've referenced this in past episodes, how many times do you meet a woman, may not be the most gorgeous person in the room, but she walks into the room and she's got a certain way about her. And you're like, what? Yeah. Like, I want to be her, or I want to be her friend, or I just want to I need to absolutely. Like rub her arm and take some of her magic, and it's a level of confidence. And so I believe if we can lift each other up and really help identify those special gifts and give that woman back her confidence, then maybe more opportunity will open up for her as well.
I totally, totally agree. Because sometimes we just need a reminder, right? We need a reminder. We're not told often enough. Maybe it's our spouses who don't tell us, or our friends who don't tell us, or our boss, or whomever, but we're not told enough and reminded enough. And then what is that? They say that women are invisible over a certain age. Have you ever heard that? Like over the age of 40 or something? I don't know. You're invisible. Oh, yeah. You're not seen on the street. You're not seen as, somebody. It's like what you were saying about your father, or not, you want to say, do you know who this is? Do you know? And it's true. I completely understand, because my parents are elderly as well, and they've had health issues, and I've been in the hospital back and forth with my mother, and I feel saying, do you know what a lovely person this is? Like, you are treating her so dismissively, and you shouldn't, right? And I think it's even more so the case with women, and I think we're at a critical time now where we really need to look at what we're doing, especially in what's going on in this world and what's happening with children. And it's just, we need to do a radical, paradigm shift or something to change the way that things are. in terms of how we treat each other and how we're living this life, you know?
And I feel like if women over 40 show up and stand up for what they believe in and use their voices, use all of our voices for whatever it is that we believe, whether it's in our family, in our community, and the world, we will all be better off for it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Totally agree with you.
Let's talk about the podcast for a minute. So parenting then and now. I think I was on your first episode.
You were my inaugural episode, so everybody needs to listen to my very first episode with you, Jackie, and thank you.
And then all of the episodes after. So I love that you go old school with like parenting references. It's so great. It's like memory lane. It's like opening a yearbook without actually having to find it and dust it off. So tell me a little bit about the podcast and what really motivated you to do it.
Interestingly enough, it's this whole thing about having different kids and people being confused and how old are you and what's going on and what I don't get it and how do you know? Plus, I was writing about parenting. So some people, if they didn't know me, they thought, okay, this is my first kick at the can. And I'm like, oh no, this is not my first kick at the can. I've actually gone through it and come out the other side. I've actually went through teenagehood and the whole thing, right? So, I also found myself oftentimes referencing experiences that I had in parenting because, as I say, my dubious distinction is or claim to fame is it's raising kids in 4 decades, 80s, 90s, 20s, 2010s. So when I had my first daughter in 1985, things were very different from when I had my last 2 in 2009. And plus, when I was a kid, it was 1970s and it was basically the Triassic Era. Because when I say to my daughter, my teenager, Miranda, when I was your age in the summer, I was, I used to go to the library and she's like, Mom, there was no Google? There was no iPhones? How did you get in touch with people? And I'd say, it's funny. I didn't really, my mom couldn't track your iPhone on my phone. She couldn't GPS track me. She couldn't look online to see where I was. She couldn't text me. And guess what? I was just fine. I'd phone her. They can't believe it.
Kids cannot lie these days.
I know they can't lie. They can't lie because even my daughter's transit pass, like I pay for it and I have it online on an app so I can see what stop she gets off and whatever and where she's going. And the other day I said, oh, why were you over at, this intersection? She's like, how do you know? She's like, how do you know that I was there? So yeah, there is no tracking, but we all survived. That was the impetus, that pervasive conversation that I kept having about, we say that it's so much better now, and it is in some ways, but not necessarily.
Right. We had to figure out, we had to get bored and then be creative and how not to be
exactly.
bored.
And then, like our parents, I'm sure your father would say to you, if you're bored, I'll find you something to do. Because my parents did that to me. If I ever said, I'm bored, my parents would say, you're bored? Okay. Oh, I've got some stuff for you to do. And there would be chores. Yeah. So it's like, no, forget it. I know not to say that I'm bored. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. But you mentioned not your first time kicking the can. We would literally go out and play a game of tag and kick a can.
Exactly. We'd kick a can. We'd ride our bikes. We'd go to the park. We'd go to the store, whatever. There was no digital, and that was okay. And, now I'm fighting with my twins all the time over their video game addiction. Basically, it's like an addiction. I have to limit them and say, you can't play right now. You can go back on when I say so, because they play it night and day. It's just, I don't know how good that is. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I think when you were on my show and we had talked about, when your dad and my mom would say, go out and come back when the streetlights are on, or come back, and I miss those kind of times. Now we're just too, we're helicopter parenting, and we're not letting our kids grow up and learn how to be independent and how to trust their judgment and how to make conscientious decisions and to fall down sometimes literally and figuratively and get back up and realize, okay, I fell down, I hurt myself, but I learned from that, and now I'm not going to do that again. That's how you learn.
Right. And you have the benefit of now having an adult daughter, but I see a lot of parents, this is one of the things that I really try to work on is I believe that your flexibility and coping skills are the answer to everything.
It's true.
When you see young adults out there who have absolutely no coping skills because they've been protected from all of the bad things. I think that's why we talk about women over 40. Like, we can get through stuff because we've been through some stuff.
And you have to. Like, I mean, that's one lesson I learned from my parents is like, you just got to get up and keep going. It doesn't matter what, curveballs life's going to throw you. You got to keep going. And particularly women. Like, my mother was very, very, she's like, Sam, you always have to work. You always have to make sure that you can take care of yourself. At the end of the day, I am very confident that if, God forbid something happened and I was obliterated financially, my house was taken from me, everything was taken from me, and all I had was the clothes on my back and my kids, I know that I'm completely confident that I could take care of them by myself. I think that's the best lesson I learned from my parents, and especially girls, young girls and women. I hate to say it because unfortunately we are still not making 100% of what a man is making. Women are the ones who are obliterated when they get divorced or separated or when they've had a domestic marital breakdown. It's women. Men go on and they often remarry within a year. And even if they don't, they're financially better off. Women, I can't remember what the figures are, but they take it's more than a 50% hit in terms of their standard of living. And that it's not just in Canada or the United States, like North America, generally speaking, this is what happens. And, for that reason alone, it is so important that little girls, young girls, are taught to be self-reliant, to be confident. We need to facilitate their confidence. We need to facilitate their sense of ability, that they can do things, they can do it on their own. And then if you do that, you don't have to worry that a young girl, your child, or any other child will make a bad decision about a relationship for financial reasons.
I just talked about that on my last episode with Leslie Morgan, who had written a book about her divorce and dating. And those were some of the biggest messages that she was trying to send people to, is like, protect yourself financially, know what you need to do to get through life on your own, because that is the problem when we get into relationships because we're looking for some sort of security or someone to save us. That's when it gets dangerous. You cannot thrive through that type of circumstance.
And we need to kind of shut down that narrative that for millennia we've been teaching girls about some guy's going to come and save you, or a prince is going to come and kiss you on the lips, you're sleeping beauty. And then I can't even remember the story. It's so stupid. I think this message that we've been teaching girls is what has caused a lot of the problems. It's caused problems because a lot of girls bought into this, not through their own fault. And then they ended up in relationships with men who are either abusive, mentally, physically, emotionally, who, took them for a ride, and then they end up impoverished, whether it's impoverished financially or emotionally. It's just not good. So I think we really, us more wise people who are over 40 need to really help the younger cohort and really kind of put that message out there about our power as women, our strength, our abilities. I mean, we have kids, we raise them, we do all kinds of things. And every woman I know, every single woman I know, Jackie, whether they're a younger woman in their 20s or up to their 50s or 60s, they are doing multitudes of things. They're living the lives of 2 or 3 people, especially the older ones, especially the ones over 40. They are not only doing their career, maybe they're doing a career change, they're also taking care of their family. They're oftentimes taking care of elderly parents. I'm like that. I'm a sandwich generation because I had kids older. When I was older, my parents are elderly. They're not in great health. So, you've got a lot of things on your plate. So we need to be valued for all the things that we're doing and all the things that we bring to everybody in this world, family and otherwise.
100%. So before we go, something I ask all my guests, what does it mean to you, Sam, to 40 thrive?
What it means to 40 thrive is to accept who I've become as a woman, to love who I am as a person, to put out my best self to the world, and hopefully to guide and help other women along that path and journey as much as I can. And even if that just means giving them some inspiration to, just follow your dreams. They're valid, they're good, they're viable, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Beautiful. I love it. Samantha Kemp Jackson, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jackie. I really appreciate it. I'm really honored that you asked me to come on. I'm so honored.
Find Sam online at her blog, Multiple Mayhem Mama, or writing over at Medium, or on her social channels at SamKJ27. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You know the one. She needs to hear this message right now. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast so you never have to search for another episode again. It will just automatically appear on your favorite podcast app. How magical is that? Until next time, take care and keep thriving.